Welcome back to another episode of Flyer Sports here on Flyer TV. I'm Joe Sullivan alongside my partner Sean Vitalis. For the Dayton Flyers, a tough loss in the end of the season to VCU in the A-10 championship in a season where the expectations were high to say the least. And coming into the offseason, there already has been a lot of changes.
Yeah, we've already got some names in the transfer portal. R.J. Blakeney, Mustafa Amsil, Mike Sharov-Jomps, who's likely to go to the draft. And then we also, have some rumors around Duron Holmes and Tumani Kamara. Flyers have picked up Enoch Cheeks from Robert Morris. So we have gained one, but those are just a few names that are already out there. The decision has to be made April 12th. So just a week or two until that deadline, and we'll have a team pretty much set.
Yeah, and let's start with, Mustafa Amsil, who, again, with this Dayton Flyers team and played a pivotal role, third in scoring over the course of this season. And he was the first one to hit the portal. He's one of those guys that, maybe could be in the starting lineup for Dayton, but decided to take a different route as, he got heard from a ton of schools right when he hit the portal, including he had a media day at South Carolina. So it'll be interesting to see whether he, tries to stick with that mid-major path, or go to, maybe a Power 5 team.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting decision for him because I think that he could be a real playmaker on a mid-major. And, like we saw just in this March Madness tournament, mid-major teams are going deep. So it's not like you're not going to get any attention at the mid-major level. I don't know about him at a Power 5 university. I think that, he was coming off the bench at Dayton. I don't see him starting in the Power 5. I think he'd definitely be in a bench role. But you are going to get that Power 5 treatment. You are going to get more media attention. It's a lot easier to make the tournament as a Power 5 team. Big Ten's got 27 teams in the tournament, every year. So I could definitely see that happening. But Mike Sharov-Jomps, I think that's an interesting one because it didn't seem like many people had him leaving. A lot of people had him coming back for year two and then going to the draft. But seeing that just year one as a one and done, as a guy that really didn't start that much when we had a healthy team. That one, puzzled me a little bit.
Yeah, and you take a look at Mike Sharov-Jomps, obviously a guy that maybe could have hit the portal, and it, wouldn't have been a crazy surprise if he were to leave this Dayton Flyers squad. R.J. Blakeney as well has entered the transfer portal for the Dayton Flyers. We saw him in the starting lineup for, really the first half of this entire season, and even last season. And struggled with some injuries as well as some off-the-court issues. And, since then really didn't play that pivotal role for the Dayton Flyers as he hits the portal. As for Mike Sharov-Jomps, a guy where you saw a lot of potential, top 100 recruit according to ESPN coming out of high school. And, he could have played a big role. And even in the beginning of this year, we talked about it really throughout the course of the season, has played a big role for the Dayton Flyers team in the starting lineup, without Malachi Smith and Kobe Elvis at one point. And down the stretch, kind of came off the bench and tried to give the Dayton Flyers some good minutes, but decided after this season he will be entering the NBA draft, and will definitely be a story that I'm sure all Dayton Flyers fans will like to keep up with.
Yeah, I think it's a big one for him. I think that's a big step in his career. Like you said, was in the starting lineup early on in the season. Flyers down with some injuries. I'm sure that he was probably expecting to come off the bench at least to start the season, and did, I believe, in the first game or two. But especially that Battle for Atlantis tournament, went down with some injuries, had some illnesses going on, and Mike had to step up. And I think got to give him credit where credit is due. Did a great job in that role. Definitely had some efficiency issues, some turnover issues, but you're going to see that with pretty much all freshman point guards. I mean, if you're the main ball handler for your team, if you are the true point guard, then mistakes are going to be made. But I mean, I just don't see him as a one and done type of guy. I think that the raw talent is there. He's a 6'8" point guard. How often do you see that? He's got great playmaking. He can really accelerate a team. But even Jaden Ivey, I feel like is a similar guy that made some great plays his freshman year, needed to come back for year two, balled out, was in contention for Big Ten Player of the Year if he didn't win it. And I think that Mike could have been that as well. So I'm interested to see where he landed because a lot of mock drafts had him in the late second round. So, I mean, he is picked in multiple, but, most one and dones are, you're a lottery pick or you're for sure a first rounder. Not too many guys are just gonna stay for 1 year and then leave if they're a second round pick or maybe just gonna be sent down to the G League.
And one of the most favorable players that we've seen over the past years for the Dayton Flyers in the basketball program. And I'm sure, to say the least, Dayton Flyer fans will be keeping up with his road to the NBA and cheering him on, whether he decides to stay and try and make a spot in the league or even G League or even overseas, depending what this path really takes him. But Dayton Flyers picking up their first transfer of the year with Enoch Cheeks, the point guard out of Robert Morris, averaging 15 points as well as 4 rebounds and 3 assists on the season. We saw Enoch Cheeks play the Dayton Flyers earlier this year in a game where Dayton Flyers obviously dominated that one, but Cheeks played really well against our ball squad.
Yeah. I mean, he came to play, and I think it's exactly what we needed, especially with Mike going to the draft. This gives us some more guard depth, and I'll be interested to see. I mean, playing at Robert Morris, a similar school to UD, obviously UD having a bigger program, but he was at that mid-major level. It might be a small move up for him, but with those averages, I think if those stayed relatively where they are, we could see him in the starting lineup, or if not, he's going to be a really strong sixth man for the Flyers.
And for the Dayton Flyers, Kobe Brea and Malachi Smith, had a great season in the end of the Flyers year, but struggled with injuries throughout the course of the year. And after this season, they both announced that they would be getting surgery for their relative injuries, and will definitely take some time. And Kobe Brea stating that it could have been a season-ending injury where he thought about it right before the year, skipping his junior campaign to get healthy and get surgery. But with Malachi Smith and Kobe Brea most likely coming back for this Dayton Flyers team, they will be the leaders really at that 1-3 punch, as well as Kobe Elvis, another guy who struggled at the end of the year with injuries, and will most likely see him at the shooting guard position for the Dayton Flyers. So despite already several players leaving, we will see some familiar faces back next year.
Yeah, I think that raises the question, though. You're going to have a lot of depth and a lot of seniority at the 1, 2, and 3. But where the Flyers really took down a lot of teams was at the 4 and 5 with Tumani Kamara and Duran Holmes. What are those positions going to look like? And then, is Kobe Brea and Malachi Smith, are they going to be ready, day one? Because we had that this year with Kobe Brea, wasn't in for the first couple weeks. It took him till after the battle for Atlantis to get in the lineup, really going. So, what is that lineup going to look like, game one, start of the regular season? And then also, Tumani Kamara, hasn't said anything. Duran Holmes hasn't said anything. And those are the two names that, all year people were throwing around. Obviously, we've already seen RJ, Mustafa, and Mike, hit the portal. But we, since before the season, Duran was thrown around as a draft prospect. And Tumani Kamara was, an unknown. Is he going to go back to Power 5? Came to us from Georgia, an SEC powerhouse. Or could he go to the draft or just take his talent overseas? Both of those guys have been thrown around in pretty much every world.
Yeah, one of the best front courts in the entire country, those two guys were. And we've still yet to hear from them. And really, after the season, we've seen over the past 5 to 10 years, Dayton Flyers and really all over the country for college programs, after that week or two after the season, they decided to make a decision whether they're going to draft or hit in the portal. And we have yet to see that from the Dayton Flyers' two best players, Tumani Kamara and Duran Holmes, and two guys where I'm sure Anthony Grant would want back. But if we're being real, most likely we will not see them playing in a Dayton Flyers uniform next year.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about Coach Grant, talk about the Flyers' leader, been their head coach for, over half a decade now. And, what do we think about his whole situation? Is he on the hot seat? I know that he's planning to come back next year. And what kind of pressure do you think he's facing to not really turn the program around, but accelerate them from a March Madness tournament hopeful to a March Madness, returner year in and year out?
Well, the talk of the town, obviously, after that loss, devastating loss to VCU, and not making the tournament again for the Dayton Flyers is Coach Grant in the hot seat. And a lot of Dayton Flyer fans across social media and just really, talking with each other thought that maybe it was time for him to go. but it is announced that he will be returning for one more season, and it feels like what we got a sense from the media and their coverage from it is that really this is it for him. If he doesn't make the tournament, then he will move on. And again, he might be coming to retirement sometime soon in the next few years, but it feels like really one more chance for Anthony Grant to try and make the tournament. And again, we see him be a great recruiter and, just a guy that can get people out of the portal. Obviously, Enoch Cheeks being the first one for the Dayton Flyers this season. And, with Deron Holmes and Tumani Kamara probably leaving, he's probably going to need to get a few more guys.
Yeah, we've got about a week or two until that deadline hits. Once again, that's going to be April 12th, where, everybody's pretty much locked in their position. So, in the coming days, I think we will see some reports. We did see Tumani Kamara post on his Instagram story a picture, no caption, of him and Coach Grant hugging and an embrace after a game. So, you can only speculate on what that means for Coach Grant and for Tumani Kamara. But there's still a lot of action just in this last week or so of this whole transfer process. But yeah, Flyers going through a lot of change. From last year to this season, we saw basically no change. We saw the addition of Mike Sharf-Jobs, but other than that, it was the same team from 2021. So this is a huge reset year for the team. Lost a few guys, likely to lose one or two more, but also, like you said, already pulled in Enoch Cheeks, and we've got one or two guys coming out of high school that will be joining the Flyers. So there's still a lot of rounding out to do, but the Flyer team for the 2023-2024 season is kind of taking shape.
And definitely something to look on for the next week or so, as Tumani Kamara and Deron Holmes will be making a decision on the future of their careers. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Flyer Sports here on Flyer TV. For Sean Vitalis, I'm Joe Sullivan. We'll see you next time.